Hey friendo, Steve here. Welcome back to Wrestle Juice. If you're watching this on Monday, January the 6th, tonight we are doing our Raw on Netflix debut watch along over at the Going in Raw channels. It's youtube.com/Steven Larson and twitch.tv/Steven Larson. We're going to be doing our live watch along and then the review. I'll be back here for the hot takes for the first Raw on Netflix. Should be a very interesting show, and kind of lining up with that for our first Ask Wrestle Juice question today from the Masked Man. He says, what are your thoughts on Triple H's first year in charge? It's been about, because I think McMahon officially stepped down / got kicked out / got screwed out of his own company because he made a bad deal for himself when he sold the company to TKO. That's still a story that is remarkably undercovered, that Vince McMahon built up the WWE for 40 years or whatever it is, only to come back after scandal to sell the company. And then he basically just sort of, I don't know, he screwed himself out of the company. It was kind of funny. Anyways, Triple H's first year, we're coming upon the first anniversary of McMahon being booted from the company, and thus Triple H taking over full on, just himself, doing the whole thing himself. Because prior to that, even in the year, 2 years or whatever it was, that McMahon was out of the company, but still kind of in the company, the rumors and reports were that he was still kind of co-running things with Triple H. He would email over or text over some instructions, directions, etc., etc. And so Triple H is the fully in charge, has been for about a year now. So there are the two biggest things that I can think of that I would list under the pros column for Triple H's time now running WWE full time, or full on just him, would be the two most important things in wrestling, in my opinion, and that's the use of character and stories. I think if you look at during Vince McMahon's run, you can see certain characters. I think the two biggest examples I can think of were Rhea Ripley and Drew McIntyre. When Vince McMahon was running things, those characters really had not lived up to their fullest potential, what they could be. Once Triple H took over, you saw a concerted effort to use both story and just a natural change in their character to better reflect who they should be. With Rhea Ripley, she was always kind of just a lobotomized version of what she was in NXT, or what she was building to in NXT. Once Triple H took over, and, she really took off with the Judgment Day stuff, she became the one person in WWE who's kind of feared the most, the brutalizer, whatever you want to call her, who would have no problem standing toe to toe with the dudes. She sort of realized her fullest potential, and you see how much more of a draw she is now, and how much more people respond to her and react to her, and what a big star she is. The same thing could be said for Drew McIntyre. He had a tremendous 2024, largely because Triple H was able to chart a path for him that made sense from a storyline perspective. Him being getting screwed over so many times, and him developing kind of a bad guy persona because of it, but adding a lot of layers to that character as well. Specifically referencing the pandemic era where he was carrying the championship in front of a bunch of TV screens. And I thought that was a wonderful twist on his character. And I think, again, it sort of made the most of who he is and who he could be. So I think making the most of the characters that he has been one major reason why WWE is where they are today in terms of its success. Also, logical storylines. He's got his faults as a storyteller, and I'll get to those in a second. But Triple H seems to appreciate that the details often matter. Sometimes Vince McMahon would set up storylines, he would just drop them, and there'd be kind of no reason for it. If I recall, the SmackDown Hacker was a thing until it wasn't. I don't know, that it just pops in the top of my head. The SmackDown Hacker always made me laugh. He would just set up storylines and then just abandon them, or he would have storyline shifts, plot twists that just simply didn't make any sense. And it's as a viewer, you just have to understand, well, that's Vince McMahon. That's just Vince McMahon. It's just that, why did the story get dropped? Because Vince wanted it to get dropped. Well, that's not a good storyline reason. I can't walk into, the latest episode of Andor, which I can't wait till that comes back, or Severance, that's coming back in 10 days or so. And Although Severance is a crazy show, like those plot twists can be pretty crazy. Or Succession or whatever. And if there's some major storyline that's just dropped, oh yeah, it's because the showrunner just wanted it to be dropped. You can't, like, that's not normal. And so when Triple H builds his stories, he sees them through. It might not always be successful, but twists and turns make sense. There's logical reasons behind them. I have no doubt that when Naomi is revealed as Jade Cargill's attacker, there will be a good reason, or at least a character motivated reason for it. And they're just not going to drop it. Might take a while to get to it, but they're not just going to drop it. So, I mean, you saw the same thing with the New Day heel turn. Like, it was like, oh my God, this makes a lot of sense. This is from where this was going, and the great twist and the kicking out Big E thing. Oh God, it was so well done. So we have a lot more of those moments because they build organically. So those are the pros. I mean, the cons, another pro is I like that he's not afraid to pull the trigger on like a title change that makes sense. We had like Jey Uso's wonderful moment as Intercontinental Champion. It only lasted a short period of time until Braun Breaker got it back. But even that's sort of in keeping with Braun Breaker's character. The guy is still young to the main roster, and so he's still learning how to get those wins. But once he learns something, man, he's really good at it. So, he's not afraid to do that stuff. Shinsuke Nakamura getting that U.S. title recently, pretty big shocker, but I like the move because it's something different, kind of mixes it up, and it makes sense to a degree. Let's talk about some of the cons in Triple H's game this past year, so to speak. That was not an intended pun. Sometimes it takes a sweet damn time to do something, like anything. He eventually does get around to it, but for example, the Austin Theory, Grayson Waller split, oh my God, it's taken forever, and it doesn't seem to be, there doesn't seem to be any light at the end of that particular tunnel. Sometimes he takes a sweet time to get to things, and eventually he usually does, but you gotta wonder, is it too late at this point? He also needs to use his women's division a bit more. He's been a bit better at that lately, but like on Raw, when you had Rhea and Liv sort of dominating, that was like the only story going on really in the women's division that had any attention to detail to it. He could stand to use his women's division a bit better. He also has a hard time booking babyface stories. He does really good with the chase, but then, like, for example, Bayley at WrestleMania, she won the title, and then it was like, wow, no stories whatsoever for her once she got the title. Cody, to a degree, also in the same manner. He's only interesting when he does bad guy stuff. And then also, this isn't really his fault, I guess, but price gouging. He's the head of creative, not the business guy. That's Nick Khan. Nick Khan, I think, is in charge of price gouging because those tickets are ridiculously expensive, but capitalism, right? So yeah, all in all, I'd say Triple H's first year has been pretty successful, especially compared to what we had before. If we look at WWE in 2019, for example, the product was damn near unwatchable, and there was a lot of people just not showing up to shows. Like, you look at the pictures back then from their attendance, and they had to do the same tarping off shit that AEW has to do, and hopefully AEW will turn around just like WWE turned it around. All right, let's take a look at our next question. Jeremy Slavin asks, did you watch that Kenny and Gabe Kidd match? I did. That and the Ricochet match were the only two matches I watched from the New Japan / AEW stuff this weekend, but I thought it was hilarious that people were up in arms about Chris Charlton going off on AEW and calling Tony Khan a money mark. I loved it. I thought it was hilarious. I like Chris Charlton a lot. I like Walker Stewart. I like that whole commentary team they got in New Japan. And yeah, like AEW, where was the promotion for Wrestle Dynasty? When Kenny Omega shows up, Tony Schiavone said something like, oh, well, we don't know when he's going to be ready, when he's going to be cleared in the ring. And I'm like, he's got a match in 8 days against Gabe Kidd. The match was awesome, by the way. The Kenny Omega Gabe Kidd match was awesome. The Tokyo Dome never looked better. They put on just an absolutely fantastic match, and I thought it was made better by Chris Charlton getting in a couple shots here and there. I don't think it was all as bad as a lot of very sensitive AEW fans made it out to be, but I thought it was pretty funny stuff. Weird to see Bryce Remsburg. That's one thing that stood out to me. It was weird to see Bryce Remsburg as a referee in New Japan. I don't know how I feel about that. But the match was phenomenal. It was an awesome, awesome match. I want to watch the rest of Wrestle Dynasty. I heard not amazing things about Wrestle Kingdom this year. I don't know if I'm going to go out of my way to check that out because, I think we did a review for it last year, but this year just not a lot of buzz behind it. All the buzz was for the Wrestle Dynasty matches. So I started watching the Ricochet Zack Sabre Jr. match, and that was really good. The first 10 minutes of that was really, really good. So yeah, I watched it. I thought it was awesome. Thought it was really, really great stuff. And it's great to see Kenny Omega back, man. I love him. He's like one of my favorites. Choweezy says, after it's all said and done, who will be the more influential in the wrestling world, CM Punk or Bryan Danielson? I think it's CM Punk. I think when you look back over the past 10 years, especially, so many of the wrestlers on the independent scene are trying to, you could see the influence of CM Punk. I think his contribution to wrestling has been a much flashier one than Danielson's. I think, number one, Danielson, I mean, he's been doing it for over 20 years. So like, he's also been a highly influential person. But when you look at how many tattooed indie wrestlers there are, how many guys are trying to emulate the CM Punk thing, I think clearly CM Punk is that guy. He's the next guy after, it's Ric Flair, it's Shawn Michaels, and I think it's CM Punk in terms of the influence on the industry. Aldo Gooden says, who should be the main character of each show this year? Raw, SmackDown, NXT, Dynamite, and Collision. So, great question. On SmackDown, given that Drew McIntyre is there now, I feel like he should be kind of the Roman Reigns now of SmackDown. Even though Roman Reigns is still on SmackDown, I feel like Roman Reigns is going to be a super part-timer. And so Drew McIntyre is going to be there week after week. I think Drew is going to be the main character on SmackDown. Over on Raw, man, I don't know. There are some good options over there, and I don't know if he's going to be there every single week, but it seems like if it was up to him, he would be. I would say probably CM Punk, although I would love to see Io Sky become the main character on Raw. I think that would be absolutely amazing. So my heart would say Io Sky. That's who it should be. But I get the feeling that Raw is going to be, it's going to be Collision. It's going to be the CM Punk show. Speaking of AEW Dynamite, who should be the main, as always, it should be Swerve. Swerve and Hangman should be the main characters of Dynamite. On NXT, we got to focus on the women's division there. I would say it all depends on what their plans are for the new big three of Zarya, Stephanie Vaquer, and Julia. I would say the main character probably is going to be and should be Julia. And then on Collision, Harley Cameron. Give her a big push in 2025. That'd be great. Ickus Dog says, how much do you think Raw on Netflix will affect WWE's general public presence? I don't think it can hurt. I think Netflix is a very prominent platform at this point. I have no idea what the numbers are like in terms of like streaming platforms, where it falls in the popularity. You gotta think it's up there at like number 1 or 2, though. I don't know if anybody right now is challenging Netflix's dominance in that sphere, but I could be completely, for all I know, Amazon Prime is the biggest streaming service. I don't know what it is. In any event, you got to think it'll help. There's been all sorts of great promotion around it. When people flick on that Netflix to watch their Stranger Things, they're going to see a WWE thing there. So yeah, I think it's going to do nothing but help it, to be honest with you. They're on USA Network. They're on network TV kind of with the CW and NXT. And now they're on, for one thing, I think that there's not that big of a difference between being on USA Network and being on Fox, for example, or NBC, which they have a presence on NBC now with Saturday Night's Main Event. So they seem to have all their bases covered. I think Netflix is the place to be when it comes to streaming. So yeah, I think it'll do nothing but good. Strange Will 97 says, do you have any specific memory of seeing guys in the indies and knowing they'd make it and were proven right? Yeah, I saw Swerve Strickland at a Progress 2017 show where he teamed up with Sami Callihan against a couple of dudes who I forget what it is, who they are, but they never made it, I don't think, or they were never like big. And yeah, I looked at that guy, I was like, man, I think this guy's got a future if he bulks up. And then he did bulk up. he's a big deal now. So yeah. Mr. Van Cleef says, how would you revitalize the AEW tag division? I'd ditch the trios titles. I'd get rid of the trios titles. NMQO6CD says, whose run was more popular? Rhea's mommy run with the World Heavyweight Championship or Becky's run as the man with 2 belts? The thing about Becky's run as the man with 2 belts is that it only lasted a month because she lost one of the titles the next month, I think to Charlotte. So yeah, I would think mommy's run as world champion was more popular than Becky's Becky 2 belts because that only lasted a month. The original Bendejo says, you've probably been asked this before, who other than Vince McMahon would have made for an interesting higher power? Who else could have delivered the infamous "It's me, Austin" line? So for one thing, you wouldn't have done the "It's me, Austin" line. For another thing, in my opinion, it should have been Kane. I feel like Kane needed a moment back then, and then would have been like, at that point would have been the perfect time for it to be revealed that he's like the true leader behind the Undertaker. He comes in as Undertaker's brother, but it turns out he's not his younger brother. It turns out he's older brother or something like that. I don't know. That sounds cheesy now that I think about it, but I feel like Kane was in a position to get that extra something. So he wasn't always just Undertaker's brother. And if it's revealed in some way, shape, or form, storyline wise, that Kane was always supposed to be the chosen one of the family, maybe of whatever Undertaker's last name is, family. And you rebrand him, like he's got the red and black, but you change the red to like, I don't know, something cooler. Like maybe it's black on black, right? Or like silver on black or something cool like that, where you change up his presentation. You add some money to it. Basically, you produce it up a bit. And he becomes the man. And then you have a power struggle within the ministry between Undertaker and Kane. But I don't think them dudes knew what they were doing. I think Triple H could pull something like that off today. I don't think Vince McMahon was capable of pulling something like that, like something really epic and saga-ish back then. Because he had him with like, they turned him into the corporate ministry. That's terrible. That's just awful. So I think it could have been Kane, and if it was like revealed that Kane is the real new higher power, I think that'd have been really cool. I think it would have made some amount of sense too. I don't think anybody else would have made sense. Christopher Daniels wasn't going to make sense. Paul Bearer wouldn't have made it. Like nobody else would have made sense. I think Kane actually could have made a lot of sense, and that would have been a really cool story they could have told if they were up to it, which I kind of feel like they weren't. Star-Lord Juan says, is there any hope left for Austin Theory as a future main eventer? Yes. As we've seen most recently with the New Day, but across the board with everybody, when you have a certain level of talent, it takes one good angle, one good story, and you're there. I fully believe that Austin Theory has everything it takes to be a main event guy. Why they haven't pulled the trigger on that or tried to figure that out yet, I don't know. I'm not there. I'm not backstage. I don't know what the deal is. But I feel like it is not too late for him, and I think he could do huge things because I think that guy's got a ton of talent. Whether or not they're going to do it or not, I don't know, but I think the ingredients are there. The Gecko says, is there any way Cody losing at 40 could have worked? He says, for example, the Elite screwing Cody and Elites to AEW versus WWE. That definitely would have been a thing. That definitely would have been a choice. I don't think that would have worked, though. What could it have worked? I don't know. Boy, that would have taken a lot. That would have taken a massive effort. Fans would have hated it. They would have absolutely... I don't know what they would have hated worse. Him just straight up losing at 40 or him not even being in the main event at 40 like the original plan was. Like, I don't know what he was supposed to do. Like, he's never said. Was he supposed to be like special enforcer, guest referee? What was he supposed to... Probably guest referee. He probably would have done that. Fans would have shit on that. But I feel like they'd have been like, okay, it'll happen at 41. I think that losing at 40, like he had the match and he lost, they'd have been done with it. They'd been like, okay, why do I care? Why do I care at this point? Why are you going to make us an extra year? You're holding up the title. Why are you doing this? So yeah, I think fans would have crapped on it. I don't think it would have been good. And I don't think there would have been any way to save that. I really don't. Stinky Bojangle says, why do so many WWE fans hate everything non-WWE? All right. Please do not ask me to get into the heads of people who are like this. I don't understand it. I don't know. I don't care to know. They like their thing, and they've just decided to not like things that are not that thing. And that's okay. That's at their discretion. That's cool. But I don't fucking know. That's not a mindset that I hold, so I can't ask myself, why are they thinking what they're thinking? That's impossible. So I don't know. Tribalism is what it is. They like their thing, and they don't like other things. I guess maybe it's this. I've never given the Orville a chance. I'm a big Star Trek fan, and it seems like Seth MacFarlane just wanted his own version of Star Trek so that he could tell his own Star Trek Next Generation stories. Cool, right on. And a lot of people are swearing by that. I saw a thing that said by season 3, the Orville is awesome, and it is fantastic, and it's amazing. Maybe one day I'll check it out. But the first episode I saw, I was like, this just seems like Star Trek cosplay. So that's me. There you go. That's why, because they see other things as like not the real deal, I guess. I don't know. That's just stemming from my love of Star Trek and my ambivalence towards the Orville. Anyways, that's going to do it for this Ask Wrestle Juice. Thanks for tuning in, everybody. I appreciate it. Till next time, see you guys around. Hit that subscribe button. Hit that thumbs up.